Hi, I'm Hilde Hinton, and I'm the author of The Loudness of Unsaid Things, published by Hachette, wonderful publishing company. The H. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. Strange times indeed. We're all going a bit lockdown crazy. I certainly am. Just want to do a shout out to all the frontliners and all the parents at home with young kids trying to school them, and weird times. So shout out to everyone, and I hope you're all okay, because it's definitely stressful. So I wrote a book, and at the ripe old age of about 48, and the origins probably lie way back when I was little, really, because me and my brother and sister had a wonderful dad who brought us up in a very character-building way. Everything was character building. I remember once he was driving me to school because he'd drop me off first and then take the kids to childcare. He was a single dad. And as we were approaching the school, I was at that everything's embarrassing age. And I said, "Oh, it's all right if you just drop me up the road, Dad. That's fine, because, I like to walk." And there was just silence. He just looked over at me. Kept driving towards the school. Chucked a little "Embarrassed, are you, Hilda?" at me. And I'm like, no, definitely not embarrassed. Definitely not embarrassed. And he kept getting closer and closer to the school. And instead of dropping me off out the front, which he normally did, he drove into the school gates and onto the netball quadrangle in front of all the teachers and the parents and the kids. Looked at me, got out of the car, went and stood on the bonnet of the car and did I'm about to make an announcement kind of flair, and said, "I am an actor," and then bowed to all the teachers and all the kids. And as he was hopping back in the car, I thought, "Oh Christ, if I show any sign of embarrassment, it's going to get worse." So he hopped back in the car and I said, "That's really good, Dad. That's really good. You want to be an actor. That's amazing. It's fabulous." And he said, "Well, that's good, because we don't get embarrassed by our family, do we, Hilda?" No. We don't get embarrassed by the ideas and who we are, do we, Hilda? No, Dad. Connie and Sam are sitting in the back. They were little. So that's an example of how embarrassing, I wasn't allowed to be embarrassed by us. I wasn't allowed to be bored. We weren't allowed to feel sorry for ourselves. And the tone stayed throughout the years. Feeling sorry for yourself, are you, Hilda? No. And I think those sort of moments in our childhood are what drove us all, really. Could Sam, that's my brother, we've got a family charity called Love Your Sister, and he rode a unicycle around the country for 12 months raising money for cancer research. And I don't think you can ride a unicycle for a year and think that's a plausible idea if you haven't had the sort of character building upbringing we had. So I just wanted to give you a bit of background into what it was like being little in our family. And in between times, of course, there was no TV, and we had to amuse ourselves and write stories and read stories and illustrate stories and, go exploring for good spots down the streets. As long as you were home by dark, that's fine. So I really think that it all comes back to that. And my brother also played a big part in me writing this book, because after my sister died, we were sitting on the back porch and there wasn't a lot going on. We were just sort of wading through our grief. And he said, maybe it's time to do something, Hildes. Maybe it's time to write that book you've always wanted to write. And I'm like, no, I'm working. Do it after work. You know, I've got kids. The kids are grown, they're fine. So he challenged me and I stepped up to the challenge. And so that's 2 out of the family of 4 that have contributed so far. Then we have my dear sister Connie, who unfortunately lost her battle with cancer about, be 2 years ago now. And I'm just going to refer to the acknowledgements in my book where I do the last little paragraph dedicated to my dead. Lastly, to my dead. Mum, I didn't hate you. Dad, it took too long, but I got there. And Connie, when the others said I didn't finish anything, you always said I was merely eliminating things I didn't actually want to do, and that I was brave for trying all the things. Well, I tried another one, Con, and I finished it. Here it is. So throughout my life, I was known as the never finish anything sister. I got my truck license because I decided I wanted to ride around the country and be free. It wasn't for me because I wasn't a very good truck driver. I wanted to get a trade, so I went to locksmithing school. It didn't maintain my interest, and I kept saying to Connie, I can't finish anything. And she said, no, darling, you're just eliminating things off your list and you just keep trying. So really, to be surrounded by a family like mine has really contributed to the loudness of unsaid things. So I'll tell you a little bit about the book. It's about a young girl who we meet when she's 7, and she goes to visit her mother in the mind hospitals. And this is loosely based on me and my mother, because when I was little, I used to go and visit her in the mind hospitals too. Also, I used to go and visit her in the Housing Commission flats every second weekend. And basically, I never knew what I was going to get. She might have been a zombie in the corner, or she might have been incredibly vivacious. And we'd go on extraordinary adventures that I realised the kids around me weren't going on. So I knew it was different, but because we don't get embarrassed by our family members, and I joined in, I really did have a good time with her. And she did the best she could. So young Susie goes to the mind hospitals, and after she loses her mum, she doesn't have a lot of friends. And so she just goes wandering and exploring and meets all the people she can meet and do everything that's in front of her, trying to find answers, trying to find a place that fits, trying to just find her place, really, because she's a bit of an outsider. And I think one of the most beautiful responses I've had to the book from the people who've read it so far are really the comments about Susie. They say she's made their way into people's hearts, and they find themselves willing her on. And really, it's just about a sort of young girl finding her way and trying to find her place and never giving up, and getting up 8 times even though she's fallen down 7. So that's what it's about. I didn't mark my page, but I'm going to read a little bit. What? Oh, whoops, that's a bit embarrassing. Okay, so Susie's gone to visit her mum at the Housing Commission flat, and she's had a bag of lollies in the park and sat on the swing because she likes to sort of work up to going to see her mum, and she's about to get to the door, so I will read you this section. As she got near the flat door, she could hear laughter and people. There was a little glass panel that ran down the side of the door, and she peered through. There were a couple of people she knew from the mind hospitals. Michael, the stick insect, and Jane with the different direction eyes. There was a fat lady in a spotted dress who was slapping her knees while her head was really far back, laughing hard. The girl smiled. It didn't look so bad today. At least with guests there, she wouldn't be the centre of her mum's world. She knocked and her mother rushed to the door, threw it open with gusto, and spread out her arms, flinging them around her daughter. She felt skin. When she was released, she could see that her mother was wearing an apron on her front, and when Merry Christmas turned around, saying something about a pancake party, she saw her mother was wearing nothing else. She could see her mum's bare bum. Her insides shriveled up as her face reddened. She looked around the room at the guests, but no one else seemed to care. As she debated saying something funny, the fat lady in the spotted dress signalled her over with helicopter hands. She walked over. The lady spun her around, picked her up, and sat her on her knee. It happened before she could say she was too old to sit on people's laps. But as soon as she landed, she liked the cuddle and comfort. The fat lady said her name was 𝗟𝗢𝗨𝗗𝗗𝗚𝗦. The girl laughed and said her name was 𝗧𝗛𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 opera singer. "But she's a real doozy," said Jane, looking at Susie and the kitchen door at the same time. The group clapped. A small bird-like woman with a pointy nose and tiny lips emerged from the kitchen and handed Susie a green enamel plate. "My name is Frances, and on the menu today we have lemon and sugar, jam and cream or maple syrup," she said expectantly, as she took a small notebook from her apron pocket. She had one of those mini half pencils. Susie said, taking her time. The room became more and more curious the longer she thought about her choice. She crossed her legs, uncrossed her legs, rubbed her chin thoughtfully as she repeated the options out loud, overacting her thought process the whole time. Michael leaned further and further over the longer she took. If she waited much longer, he might topple over. "What did you have, Jane?" Susie asked. "Jam and cream," Jane said as she clapped loudly once. Susie hadn't heard such a staccato clap before. It was sharper than a metronome. "I'll have jam and sugar, thanks," Susie said decisively. "No, you won't, young lady," Frances said in a decrescendo, flipping her notebook shut. "That is not on the menu. Wait here, please, while I consult with the manager." Frances turned on her heels and burst into the kitchen just as Susie's mother was coming out, fry pan in one hand and a laden plate in the other. Bam! Frances ended up on her bottom with a lemon and sugar pancake sliding ceremoniously off her head. Her mother stood on it when it hit the floor, and she went down with a crash. The pan circled round and round on its base, making a dreadful racket before stopping at Michael's feet. He picked it up with one hand and swooped down his long arm and picked up the bird lady with the other. She was instantly upright, patting herself down to make sure all her bits and pieces were in place. Tight bun of hair on head, check. Notebook in penny pocket, check. Eyes, nose and mouth, still on pace, check. Susie's mother laughed uproariously. Unlike the bird lady, she enjoyed the chaos. Michael scooped up the pancakes and began shoveling them into his mouth, mumbling something about not liking things going to waste. Jane stood behind Merry Christmas and tried 3 times to help her up, but her mother was having none of it. Her apron was askew and one of her boobs was laughing along with her. Susie was momentarily mortified, and then she stood up and gave everyone a job. Jane was to get a cloth, Michael was given her enamel plate and told to pick up the remaining fallen pancake pieces. 𝗟𝗢𝗨𝗗𝗚𝗏 provided a strong base from which to pull Merry Christmas up, and Susie got on her knees to use the cloth Jane had rinsed for her. As each section was wiped down, Jane attentively took the soiled cloth and brought it back fresh as a daisy and smelling like lemon. It made Susie want a lemon pancake. "Can I have a lemon and sugar pancake, please, Frances?" she asked as she wiped the last dirty bit of floor. Frances had a burst of purpose, ushered herself and Merry Christmas back to the kitchen, and the party guests resumed position. Susie returned to 𝗟𝗢𝗨𝗗𝗏𝗧's lap. Frances poked her head out of the kitchen and looked left and then right before risking the move to the lounge room. She gave Susie the pancake, and Susie said thank you. Frances patted her on the head ever so lightly, and said the girl has good manners to the room at large. Everyone nodded approvingly. Susie had spent enough time with people from the mind hospitals to know they liked good manners very much, nearly as much as they liked God. What they didn't like was the news. It ended up with lots of head shaking and walking around in circles and noises instead of words coming out of their mouths. It got louder and louder the more news they heard. So I'll leave it there because I think that gives you a bit of an idea, but it's sort of a light, funny, irreverent look had a daughter with a mother with mental illness. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to write about it is, even though we're talking about mental health a lot more, and we've got Beyond Blue and everything's on the table, unlike when it was swept under the carpet, we don't really talk about what the family members are going through, the friends, the kids, the siblings, the parents. And sometimes you can feel really alone when you're going through this experience. But you're not alone. And yeah, that's pretty much one of the main drivers of writing the book. Oh, somebody's just said that they love the cover. Is there a story behind the artist? Do you know what? I don't know who the artist is. How embarrassing. I don't think it's even reflected in the book. But I will do my best to find out, because really that's something I should know. I mean, when you love something, you really should know who did it. A little bit embarrassing. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, make sure you pop them on through, because I'm here. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is feelingy. Oh, that's my brother. Hi, Sam. Oh, dear. I love you. Yeah. Sam and I are actually working on a project together at the moment. So I know that this is really about this book, but I'm actually going to talk about my next project, because why not, huh? Last year, my brother convinced me to go out on the road with the charity, because even though I've always been in the engine room, I've never actually been out on the road. Always visited, and I was always a part of it. And he said, Hilde, you don't know until you get out there. You're not going to know. Just find a way. Take some time off work. Come out. Come and see why I do what I do and why I'm so committed. So very unlike me, I took a chance. I know I look all flibbity-gibbet, but I'm the sensible one in the family. So I joined the road, and that's the road crew there. That's me and my brother and Canada and Hawley, and the four of us hopped in a caravan and a motorhome and went all the way through Queensland and part of Victoria over 20 weeks. And while we were out there fundraising and raising awareness for cancer research, all those community fundies, it was an amazing time. Yeah. But what I found was I was just meeting the most amazing people every day. And at that stage, I'd finished this book and I started writing other people's stories, because everyone has a story. And we're putting together a book of said stories that's going to come out for Christmas and raise money for cancer research. And it's been a very freeing experience being out on the road. It's been great meeting all these people. Everybody has a story, and it's all about the heroes that live in our streets and the heroes that live next door. Just people doing day-to-day things that are extraordinary. So that's the project we're working on now. I went a bit off topic there. Yeah. What books inspired you growing up? Well, I was definitely an Enid Blyton girl when I was young. The Faraway Tree made me realise that it was okay to be a dreamer, because I just walked around seeing magic in everything. And just knowing that there was this magical tree with all these magical people on it sort of excused my own dreams and allowed me to dream even further. I got all investigatory when I read her Secret 7 books. Started following people on the streets and shadowing them. So Enid Blyton was definitely my little kid, sort of go-to author. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of books going around at the moment as well. There, Nissa Sharp. There you go. The artist is my niece, Nissa Sharp. Well, thank you, and I'm sorry I didn't know it was you, and it's beautiful. and I'm very proud to have it on my book. And yeah, great work. Oh, goodness. Wow. You must be very proud of your niece. She's a great artist. And say hi to her for me. Don't tell her a bit how I didn't know who she was, because that would be embarrassing. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Anne. Yeah, it is a delightful project. And it's very broad-reaching as well. Yeah, we've got young Shannon up in Brisbane who always planned to travel with her nan, and her nan got too sick to travel. So Shannon reached out to the World Wide Web and got everybody to write postcards to Nan. And for the last month of her life, they travelled the world together on their armchairs. And there's Guy, who was 22 years old when he sought custody of his sister's children because his sister had passed away. Yeah, so just some amazing stories out there, and I'm really enjoying putting them together and meeting people. Yeah, so that's been great. Who are your favourite adult authors? It's a bit like, I think it's a bit like music. So I tend to like songs rather than artists. So rather than authors, I'm going to talk about books. So Bridge of Clay by 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗏 blew my noggin. I reckon I hadn't read anything that good for years. I could feel it. I could see the donkey in the kitchen. I felt everything those teenage boys went through. And yeah, it was so picturesque. And I loved every word. I don't think there was a wasted word in that book. Yeah, so that's a good solid recommendation. Yeah, he's the one that really jumps out at me. But there's heaps. I really love 𝗟𝗡𝗨𝗗𝗚𝗏, who is an Australian writer. And when you read her, you're just in it, and you see it, and you feel it, and you smell it. And go along for the ride and lose yourself in it. I'm also a bit of a crime tragic. Love my crime books. Love Don Winslow. I actually like Robert Crace. He's got and Emma Viskick is a great crime writer. She's Australian, and they're set in Melbourne. So if you want to roam the Melbourne streets, with lots of adventurous stuff going on around you, get on it. She's terrific. Yeah. Why do outsiders capture your imagination so much? Yeah, I mean, gosh, in a way, I think we're all outsiders. I mean, we sit there and we look at you go to school and you're looking at all the cool kids, I don't think they have as big a sense of belonging as you think. But it definitely attracts my attention. People who go out on a limb, people who try different things, trust their ideas, be creative. When everybody else is telling them how silly it is to do something, they do it anyway. So, of course, they capture my imagination. It's not necessarily the rebelliousness of it. It's the bravery. Yeah, that's what I think. I'm just going to have a sip of water because I'm a bit parched. What did you find most challenging in writing the book? Hi, Emma. Well, the actual doing bit, yeah, that had all the ideas swimming around, made some notes, had these grand plans of turning them into a book, and then I'd just sit down and it didn't come as readily as I hoped. So I came up with a system. What I did was I told everybody I knew that I was writing a book, and I set up a desk just off the kitchen. There's a rather full household here. They're being very quiet tonight. And then, I'd come home from work and sitting there doing nothing, and one of them would poke their heads around the corner and say, "Oh, I'm not writing today, Hilda." So I had to hit the keys and be a good example and show that you can actually do it. So I enjoyed the writing in my head a lot and spent days on end doing that. That was my favourite bit, but the challenging bit was definitely sitting at the keys. Yeah, but when you read a bit that you've written that you really like, it just keeps you going. It's great. Do you feel lighter with this story now out in the world? Yeah, I feel way lighter in general. I think I found forgiveness for my mother who suicided. I'm no longer at all upset with her or angry or, I don't know, I don't feel cheated. I feel a lot lighter. It's been very cathartic. The autobiographical side of the book has been very cathartic. And once I knew the book was out there, I was a bit sort of frightened about what people would think. But, you know, I've been getting some really good feedback, and a lot of people have reached out because they've had similar situations in their youth, and I think it's great messaging with people that have been through something similar. And yeah, I just feel awesome, and yeah, I feel like the rest is ahead of me, and it just took me a while to get going. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know about, yeah. Well, thank you for calling me brave. I think the lesson in it is that if you set your mind to something, there's nothing to stop you from doing it except yourself. And you can have all the excuses like I'm busy and I'm, you know, got family and all the things I used as an excuse for 20 years. But essentially, the only thing stopping you is yourself. And sure, my brother gave me a leg up and a push along. But, you know, I took the challenge and I proved you can do it. So if you can be a wayward 48-year-old who can sit down and write a book, then you can do anything you really want. Yeah, well, go for it, Emma. Yeah, what I said stands. Just do it. And, you know, a lot of it's going to be rubbish. But if you write a bit of rubbish for a while, good stuff comes out. So just sit down every day and do a bit, even if it's 5 minutes. If you're doing something every day, you'll get there. How long did it take me to write? Hi, Jeanette. It's a bit hard to see. My glasses aren't. Yeah, hi, Jeanette. How long did it take me to write? It took about 8 months before I pressed send on the final draft. So it probably took 6 months to get the draft down, and then 3 months to go back over it and rework it. And I had my dad's advice in the back of my head during that stage, because he was a writer. He published 16 books, and I remember him saying to me, heaps of people can write a book, but often when people go to improve their draft, they write a different draft instead of improving what they've got. So that was really good advice, and I applied that all the way through. Yeah, so 8 months. And then the editing process, yeah, that took probably the same amount of time. Yeah, it's kind of weird getting your pages back with all the markings. I didn't find many of them offensive. I think I was fairly open-minded to criticism. Definitely had a comma war, though. Definitely had a comma war. I'm not a fan of the Oxford comma. So the editor put all the commas in, and I went and took them all out with little notes on the sign that weren't passive-aggressive at all. Just, you know, I prefer this comma not be here, thanks. You know. Yeah, I went off on a tangent there about the editing process, but I think that takes about as long as writing it. Why did you choose to make it fiction and not a memoir? Thank you. So although the timeline of my life is in there, a lot of the characters are fictional because I actually don't remember a lot of the people around. I just remember feelings. So what I got to do was take a timeline that I had a solid understanding of and just add all these characters in. And, you know, if it was going to be a memoir, it'd probably only be 20 pages from what I remember. So I just, it's definitely a merging of the two things. Because I wanted to give it colour and light and fun and humour. And yeah, so that was the fun bit, putting all the imagination over the timeline. Yeah. So I think what I'm going to do is say farewell now. Thank you for listening. The book's out now, and when Heroes Next Door comes out later in the year, you can help out the cancer research and buy that too. Appreciate your time and have a lovely Monday evening. What's left of it.